Backstory. I live in the basement floor of my parents' house. My name is on the title. There was a bit of a financial kerfuffle that required my assistance. We have 2 dogs, one bearded collie named Abby, who loves my dad, and a cockapoo named Dexter, who's my bud. Important note about Abby, she is a toy shredder. The only kind of dog toys that last in my house are made of rubber, or are too big for Dexter to get a good grip on. A few months back, Dexter and I attended an agility course, and at the end of that course, Dexter was presented with a bucket full of dog toys and allowed to pick one to take home. He pulled out a purple fuzzy monkey thing that had some skinny ropes coming out. Forgive me if I slip and call it Tug Monkey. Now, Dexter loved playing with that toy and always remembered where I put it last, so he knew where he needed to sit and stare. When I got this toy, I showed it to both parents and explained that Abby, under no circumstances, is allowed near, as she'd have it shredded in seconds. They both acknowledged and said they get it. I was always very careful to put it up on a shelf when he was done with the monkey, and it never journeyed upstairs. Last month, I went out for a little while, and when I come back, Dexter was frantic. He flung himself at me, and once he was sure I was looking, he sat and stared where I'd last left the toy. The shelf was empty. Fearing the worst, I went to check upstairs, and there's Abby, destroying one of the tug ropes and covered in purple shreds of fabric. I was livid. When questioned, my mother admitted to giving Dexter the toy, and she just forgot the door between halves of the house was open. Before someone suggests a stay in a nice padded room, this is a pattern of consistent disrespect that's been going on since I've moved back, and been promised complete autonomy. I put up a whiteboard on the between halves door facing out. If I'm going to be in a Zoom meeting with the camera on or on a call, I used to write "in a meeting" on the whiteboard. Sometimes this worked. Most times it didn't. Mom would just have a laundry basket and decided the stuff needed doing, and figured my call was surely over. It hasn't been yet. I feel like she's walking in on at least 5 or more calls in the last month, where I've been actively speaking and had to mute and cover the camera. I'm only on calls a very small fraction of the day, perhaps an hour or so in total. My boss has commented on distractions and actually had me start speaking less. Did I mention my mother has a tendency to whistle or sing while she's doing chores? Or that one time she derailed an entire meeting because she unleashed a belch so loud it reverberated? This isn't just a quiet blur in the background. It's a real problem. So I load Dexter into my car and we fly to the pet store for an emergency purple monkey replacement. Happily enough, I found the exact same toy. I purchased that and some treats. Crisis averted, right? Wrong. We get back to the house and he zips over to where the murdered toy was, sitting and longing. I take the tags off the replacement and distract him with some treats, put the fake monkey on the shelf, and when Dexter resumed his post, I gave him the duplicate, which he sniffed and then snubbed, before crying and staring at the shelf some more. I am a patient man. The bullshit threshold I have with my parents is set pretty high, but seeing that, my heart broke. There was an Arthur fist. I vowed revenge. I went to the hardware store and ordered a steel interior door, the same keypad lock we already have for exterior doors, and some security door hinges. I then had to return the first door and measure first before ordering the correct size. For the next 3 Sundays, my cousin helped me out with getting everything assembled and adjusted, while my parents went to church. The 4th Sunday was spent with a soldering iron lobotomizing the digital code lock, so it rejected every code entered. Yesterday we did the door swap and managed to get everything done and cleaned. When my parents left for church, flimsy particle door was all that stood between my half and theirs. When they returned, steel door with wood facade, code lock, and tamper-proof hinges. Also wound up changing the code for my exterior door. There was wailing and lamentations and gnashing of teeth. How could you? What about laundry? All this for a dog toy? I calmly explained that the door won't stay closed. But when it is closed, it's staying closed. My name is on the deed of the house now. I can make modifications to my space if I want to. My mother wanted to know, what about an emergency? I told her I'd give her the code right now to the new door if she could tell me one situation where minutes mattered. There was hemming and hawing and no actual laundry emergency cited. Why did I spend more than $150 on a door lock only to immediately break it? Because it's got a working deadbolt, which is all I needed, and my mother spent 3 hours yesterday trying to brute force the code lock. Why did I spend more than $1,000 on a deadbolt and a door that will sneer at a battering ram? 2 reasons. The first being I was mad and wasn't sure anything else would do the trick. And second is because my sister lurks this subreddit religiously and will likely spread this to the rest of my extended family. Second story. Well, it had started out to be a good day. A quiet morning at home, coffee and breakfast, a nice shower, then a loving snuggle with my love. I had noticed my pantry was a little bare when I fixed breakfast, so I decided to go shopping. Under normal circumstances, I'm one of those weird guys that actually enjoys shopping. But with what's happening in the world currently, I try to keep my out and about times to a minimum. This includes showing off my antique truck. Well, getting to Wally World was easy. Not that many people were there that early in the morning, so I relaxed a bit, headed in, and started my shopping. Remember in previous posts of mine how I keep being mistaken for a store worker? Well, it happened again. Shopping was going smoothly, and I was moving quickly to get it finished before more people came to Wally World. I stopped briefly to straighten a few things on the shelf that someone left in disarray when I heard the dreaded ahem, the call of the Karen in the wild. As an ex-serviceman and a police officer, I learned to be polite most times, but not be afraid to raise the bar, so to speak. Nice equals nice in return. Rude equals rudeness right back at you. I asked without looking, "Yes? You need something?" "How rude," was the response. Then, shouted by Crazy Karen, "Look at me when I'm talking to you." She then grabbed my shoulder and attempted to turn me to face her, getting madder when I forcibly slapped her hand away from my shoulder and told her, "Touch me again, lose that hand." "Whee!" she shrieked. "You assaulted me! Help! Help! I'm being assaulted! Help!" Now, being ex-military, I know how to project my voice. I turned to face her and shouted at the top of my lungs, literally into her face. "Enough! You grabbed me first, as the security cameras will show you. Shut your mouth and get this through that concrete block you call a skull. I do not work here, now get the hell away from me before I do something we both will regret." She stood there, stunned, as if no one had ever dared to talk down or back to her in her entitled life. That didn't last long. I could see she was winding up for a tirade, so I beat her to it. I said, "Shut your mouth and get moving, you old crow." My yelling must have been what attracted a worker who in turn called the manager, known as Manager for the story. Manager came running into the aisle just in time to see Karen attempt a slap, which was turned aside with some force, leaving her holding her hand. She spotted Manager and stomped her way over to him, and started her nonsense about the worker, points at me, was rude and yelled at me, then slapped me and threatened to beat me. "I want him fired and arrested. Now!" Manager separated us and talked to me himself, while having a worker talk to her. I don't know, but someone had called the police anyways, and several of them came swarming into the place, looking hell-bent for leather. They were directed to the aisle we were in, and 2 confronted me, and 1 confronted her. She immediately turned on the crocodile tears, and recounted her story, now adding I was trying to kidnap her and R-word her. It was then that Cop 1 knew she was lying. Kidnap and R-word her? She stepped away and called Cop 2 over to her. They talked a few minutes and came back and told us both they think it's best to go view the store's security footage. I have yet to see a Wally World that doesn't have them all over the place. So we were escorted to the office, and the cops made us sit in chairs there. Me, I just kept quiet, answering questions when asked. She kept on rambling, fake crying, and telling her story which changed by the minute. Hence, Crazy Karen. Cop 1 went into the inner office and came back out a few minutes later, stepped in front of me and asked if I want to press charges. "What?" Crazy Karen spouted. "He assaulted me. I want him jailed right now." Cop 1 said. "After you grabbed his shoulder and tried to forcibly turn him to face you," she said to Crazy Karen, "you are the one who started this whole thing and are guilty of assault. What would you like to do, sir?" Looking at me. Well, assault is a very serious charge. Well, at the same time, she cannot be allowed to harass other shoppers like that. Tell you what, I won't press charges as long as she's banned from this Wally World permanently. She exploded at that and basically went nuts and started screaming as loudly as she could, No words, just wordless anger and hate-filled screaming. She then got stupid. She grabbed a lamp from a close-by stand and charged at me with it. Cop 1, Cop 2, and Cop 3 had her down and in cuffs in a few seconds. She never got near me with that lamp. Last I saw her, until a later date, which is a story in itself, I'll post that a later time, was her being dragged out in cuffs, having to literally be carried from her refusing to cooperate and playing ragdoll in an attempt to not be arrested. I thought I had seen crazy before. This one put them all to shame. Kind of like encountering a nuclear Karen or something like that. I didn't see her again until I discovered her in a Wally world, having changed her looks a bit and hunting for me. After all this, I finished my shopping as quickly as I could, went back home and told my love what happened. He died laughing. He thought it was so funny. Had me laughing after a bit too, at the absurdity of that Karen. Last story. Now understand, by the age of 12, I was very responsible due to how strict my parents were. I was on honor roll, was cooking all of the meals my family ate and cleaning the house. Because of this, I didn't have energy or want to clean my room. So I was never allowed to watch TV or go outside to play, making me introverted and an awkward book nerd. The year I was 12, I was told I was old enough to work now. So that was the last year I was going to be paid for while shopping for school supplies. Now understand that this took place around 2006, so it was a time before cell phones were a norm. Throughout the school year, I had carried on doing my chores, living how I usually work, and walking around town looking for a job, rather than participating in a band and the Christian clubs I was part of. My mother found out about the band at first and dragged me by my hair through the halls and down to the band room in the beginning of the year, in front of both students and teachers. Luckily, after that, since I was a good student, the teachers never called my parents for issues again and spoke to me directly. They were also helpful in finding me a well-paying job on a small farm just outside of town. It was $10 per hour of hard labor, from cleaning up manure to going through the fields or doing pony rides with kids. And my grandparents started stopping by and watching my sister to help my parents out since they found out that they were leaving her alone. Their free sitter was no longer available. My sister was 9. Now understand, my grandparents did ask for $10, so she was still left alone often, but they lived 25 miles away at the time, and that was $5 gas there and $5 gas back. They did this 5 days a week, and were living off Social Security insurance. Even as a child, I thought this was reasonable, even more so after I had my own when I was older. I was paid in checks and didn't have an account, so I diligently gave my checks to my parents. I think they would usually be between $150 or $200 per week, as I worked 5 days a week after school, and a full day during the weekend and about $400 in the summer. They would give me $50 per week, saying they were putting the rest in my savings so I had money to pay for college. As I was an honor roll student and we were poor, this was believable and reasonable to me. I gave my grandparents $30 to pay for whatever costs they had with my sister, as they were bringing fresh food and picking me up from work. I saved the rest and eventually got a bike, so I wouldn't need to walk. I didn't know how to ride a bike, so I broke my wrist the first week and had to walk to work anyway. Yes, I was 12, almost 13, and still worked with a broken wrist for 10 weeks, as I wouldn't be able to work as much in the winter. Around this time, my mother, who switched jobs almost as much as she bathed, stopped working completely, and my dad had started working a little less. Eventually, they asked me to go take off a week, and I was an obedient child, so I did. They went on vacation without us, leaving me with only $50 I got from work and no groceries, as my grandparents would usually buy the groceries. I walked with my sister to the grocery store and bought groceries. Mind you, I still had a broken arm at this time, so I had stolen a grocery basket, which I got punished for. I never knew how they afforded this. They did this a few more times, and I was placed in foster care for 6 months when I was 14. My grandparents took my sister, but could only afford to take one of us, and since I was working and responsible enough, we agreed it would be her. The man that took me in was an amazing person. Him and his wife were separated for years, but stayed married so he could take in fosters. Other than their son, they had 5 foster kids other than me. They were amazing people and would cash my checks and take me to see my grandparents and sister. They also knew I was giving my grandparents money, more so now than before, for food for my sister, and they would bring fresh vegetables from their garden with us. I never understood how my parents kept affording vacations. I found out later that my college savings never existed. And when they got custody back, my foster dad made sure to get the judge to force them to make a separate account for me. I didn't find out until much later that the real reason was for a paper trail to prove that they were stealing my money, as he died while I was 16, after helping me get my license and a car. But it did deter them from taking it as often after that.